The Acolyte's first season is over. Like I've done with other Star Wars series, I've been collecting a list of Easter eggs and references for all 8 episodes. In this video, I've got 75 of the biggest and most important Star Wars connections you may have missed. The episode Lost Found opens on the planet Ueda. We've never seen it before, but the book Crimson Climb mentioned a dish called Ueda Noodles in 2023. I imagine we're seeing that exact meal being served in the tavern. May asks a local, where is your Jedi? This is a time when the Jedi Order was more spread throughout the galaxy. They're also part of the communities they lived in, as seen by Master Indara sharing a drink with local bar patrons. Pip has a couple of worn stickers on his outer casing. One of them is the same symbol on the helmet Luke trains with on the Millennium Falcon in A New Hope. Another is a Tuka Cat. Lucasfilm released all of the stickers so we could see how Osha customized her droid. Osha's friend says she missed a wild trip to Nar Shaddaa with the piloting crew. Nar Shaddaa was known as the Smuggler's Moon. It was a rough place that orbited the Hutt homeworld Nal Hutta. Osha is working with the Trade Federation, or Trade Feds as they're called for short in this episode. This is 100 or so years before their blockade of Naboo is seen in The Phantom Menace. They are certainly still acting like a megacorporation, placing their cargo above the lives of their workers. A Vector starship signals the arrival of the Jedi. Those ships were originally based off of concept art for Revenge of the Sith, but have become the Jedi starfighters of the High Republic era. Yord and his Padawan Tassi arrive wearing their white and gold temple robes. Even though they aren't actually at a Jedi temple, these robes were a staple of the High Republic era. They are worn for more formal occasions when it was expected the robes would not be getting dirty. Tassi wears a green sash around her waist beneath her belt to signify her status as a Padawan as well as her lightsaber color. Tassi is also a Zygerian, one of Leslie Headland's favorite Star Wars aliens. This is our first time seeing one in live action. Yord notes that Osha is in Corpsec, about as far away from Coruscant as you can get. Corpsec is short for the corporate sector. That was an area of space where corporations had less restrictions and basically ran their own territory. Planets like Cantonica were located there. It makes sense that the Trade Federation would be operating in this vicinity. Osha says she became a Mechnek because her Jedi skills weren't transferable. Ahsoka Tano struggled with similar issues after leaving the Jedi Order in the Clone Wars. We learn that Osha was 8 when she first joined the Jedi. It's still stated to be old for a Padawan, but it's not as old as Anakin was in The Phantom Menace. We see the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, and you can note that the rest of the city planet is still being built up. The temple stands several levels taller than the levels below it, which will have grown up to the home of the Jedi by the time of the prequels, almost like the city or the Republic are beginning to swallow the Jedi Order. Inside, Sol tells several younglings that your eyes can deceive you, we must not trust them. Those echo the words Obi-Wan Kenobi told Luke Skywalker on the Millennium Falcon in A New Hope. He also tells the children to imagine diving into the Force as if they are diving into a great ocean. The Jedi of the High Republic books and comics all saw the Force in their own unique ways. Elzar Mann viewed the Force as an ocean as well. Speaking of book and comic characters, Vernestra Rwoh makes her first on-screen appearance in this episode. She is one of the primary characters of the High Republic Publishing Initiative, mostly appearing in the middle grade and young adult books, but occasionally popping up in the adult novels as well. Osha's prison ship crashes on the planet Karlak. That world first appeared in the Clone Wars series and is notable as the location for the first time Ahsoka Tano met Bo-Katan Kryze. The escaped prisoners are held in the Jedi Temple Detainment Center. We first saw that part of the temple in the High Republic comic Shadows of Starlight, where the Order held a former Jedi named Aslan Rel. Osha's crashed ship is full of debris, and one of the broken rods appears to be a cryogenic density combustion booster, a large metal rod that was used in A New Hope in the trash compactor scene. As Sol and Jeki leave the Jedi Temple to search for Osha, they are now wearing their brown and gold mission robes, which are made to be less formal than their temple robes. They walk past a Selkath sitting at the door, an alien that was first created for the Knights of the Old Republic video game. The species also popped up in the Clone Wars animated series, but this is its first live-action appearance. As the Jedi ship leaves, I think you can see a Razor Crest on a landing platform in the distance. That's the same model of ship that Din Djarin flew until it was destroyed by the Empire. In the very first episode of The Mandalorian, it was said to be an old model. In the episode Revenge Justice, we see another Jedi temple on the planet Olega. Again, this illustrates that the Jedi Order was more present throughout the galaxy and less centralized as they are in the prequel films. The outpost has a doorbell droid similar to Jabba the Hutt's TT-8L model seen in Return of the Jedi. Jeki talks to Osha about being a Mechnek, noting that only R2 droids are supposed to work on the outer hulls of ships. We see R2-D2 do exactly that in The Phantom Menace, saving Queen Amidala's ship as it escapes Naboo. Kymir has a living creature in a jar in the apothecary shop he takes over. I can't tell what the creature is, but it reminds me of the baby Sarlacc you can see in Dak-On-Dar's shop on Batuu in Galaxy's Edge. He reminds May that peace is a lie, which is the opening line of the Sith Code, some not-so-subtle foreshadowing to Chimere's true identity as the Stranger. May notes that Torben has taken the Barash vow. That's appropriate because that vow was taken by a Jedi as an act of self-punishment. They would step away from taking any action as a Jedi, choosing only to meditate on the Force until they felt confident in their purpose. Jedi would usually take the vow if they felt guilty about something. It was named for Barash Sylvain, who felt guilty about her part in a war on the planet Ganzavor. The shopkeeper that sells Osha a cloak so she can disguise herself as May was inspired by the Bando Gora, a dark side cult from the video game Star Wars Bounty Hunter. A citizen of Olega can be seen holding a Camtano, the famous ice cream maker prop that has since become what seems like a very inconvenient carrying case. Yord is given the iconic Star Wars line, "I have a bad feeling about this," as they wait for Sol to confront May. In the episode Destiny, Mother Coral is a Zabrak, the same species as the Jedi characters Eth Koth and Ajan Kolar, and kind of Darth Maul, he's a Dathomirian Zabrak, and Coral and the others are Zabraks from Iridonia. The Witches of Bryndock are new to Star Wars, but witches are not. 1985 featured 2 witches on the planet Endor in the Ewoks cartoon and the Battle for Endor made-for-TV movie. The latter was eventually retconned into being a Night Sister of Dathomir, the most prominent kind of witch in Star Wars, but they are far from the only kind. We learn that Osha and May were born without a father. Of course, that's meant to make us think of Anakin's immaculate conception. He was born purely by the will of the Force, while the twins seem to have been created by Mother Anastasia. When Osha goes on the Jedi starship to be tested, Torben takes a blood sample from her, presumably to get her midichlorian count. She is also given the image on a screen test that Anakin takes in The Phantom Menace. The first image she is meant to guess is a Tuka Cat. In Episode 4, Day, Ki-Adi-Mundi makes his glorious return. This changes his Legends birth date as well as Surian lifespans, but to be clear, that information has yet to be established in any canon source. A Tarlafar can be seen wandering around the Jedi Council's spaceport when Sol recruits Osha for his mission to find May. That species first appeared in the background of Solo: A Star Wars Story, and recently much more prominently in The Bad Batch. A Keldor is part of the mission, leading many fans to wonder if he could have been a young Plo Koon. It's not him, obviously, it's a new character named Ithia Pan. The Tracker Basil is a Tynan, a species that was first created for the legend story Han Solo's Revenge in 1979. This is their second canon appearance, having first been included in the novel Catalyst by James Luceno. Osha has to wear a civilian uniform of sorts on the mission since she is not a member of the Jedi Order anymore. Yord pointedly calls her a civilian, which reminded me of Mace Windu doing the same to Ahsoka Tano in the final episodes of the Clone Wars. The flying bug creature Sol kills in the forest is called an Umbra Moth. That's not a reference to anything else, I just figure a lot of people would want to know what it was called. In Episode 5, Night, we see the Sith Stranger using his helmet and his gauntlet to temporarily disable Jedi lightsabers. His armor is made out of cortosis, a metal that had the ability to absorb high amounts of energy, could deflect a lightsaber strike, and also short out the blades. It first appeared in the Legends novel I, Jedi by Michael Stackpole. This is far from its first canon appearance, but definitely its first on-screen appearance. I would not consider myself an expert on the types of lightsaber combat or their forms, but the StarWars.com episode guide says Chimere uses Trickata, a style that involves turning his saber on and off during combat. At the end of the episode, Chimere is accompanied by a bit of Kylo Ren's theme from the sequel trilogy. I am not sure what that means yet, but it's definitely an interesting musical reference. In Episode 6, Teach/Corrupt, we see a planet that looks an awful lot like Octo, but Leslie Headland has confirmed that it's a new location. The presence of a cortosis vein in the Stranger's Cave has led fans to believe it might be Baldimnik, a planet from Star Wars Legends that was rich in cortosis and also happened to be where Darth Plagueis murdered his master, Darth Tenebris. It was also an ocean planet with rocky landmasses. The senator who speaks with Vernestra Rowe is an Abednado. Like many other Abednado characters, he is named after a Beastie Boys song. Senator Chewant is named after So What You Want. Vernestra's dislike of hyperspace is played off as a joke in the episode, but the High Republic books tell us why she finds it unsettling. It's because she would occasionally have visions in the Force while traveling through hyperspace. They could be visions of the future or even conversations with dead people, all of which she found to be unsettling. According to the StarWars.com episode guide, Vernestra's ship is named the Kantaros. Its namesake is her Padawan from the High Republic books named Imri Kantaros, who she knighted in the book Defy the Storm. The Stranger tells Osha his helmet is a sensory deprivation helmet. When you put it on, it's just you, the Force, and whatever you take with you. That's an echo of Yoda's line to Luke about the Darkside Cave on Dagobah. What's in there? Only what you take with you. Vestra examines the crime scene on Kofar similar to the way Ahsoka does in the Ahsoka series or Quinlan Vos in the Clone Wars. It's a power known as psychometry. She uses her light whip to kill an attacking Umbramoth, which marks the first on-screen appearance of this weapon. Light whips have been in Star Wars since the classic Marvel comics in 1985. Vestra's weapon was its introduction to canon in the book A Test of Courage. In Episode 7, Choice, Kelnaka cooks the Jedi crew Nuna legs. Those creatures have been used in food frequently in both Star Wars animation and live action. They first appeared in The Phantom Menace. The campfire looks similar to the way Chewbacca cooked the porgs in The Last Jedi. Jonas Suotamo is fast becoming an expert Wookie chef. I don't know if Torben's desire to get home to Coruscant was meant as a direct connection to the High Republic books, but he reminds me a lot of Reath Silas, another Padawan who got homesick on missions and much preferred spending his time in the Jedi archives. Indara's mention of a hyperspace disaster occurring a century earlier is a direct reference to the High Republic books. Light of the Jedi begins with that exact event, which affected several planets across the Outer Rim. Sol says they are searching for a vergence on Bryndock, a powerful concentration of Force energy. Locations like the Darkside Cave on Dagobah were considered vergences, but people like Anakin Skywalker could also be a vergence. Torben is said to have been from the planet Bonadan. That world was first created for the book Han Solo's Revenge, the second major inclusion from that story in this series. Leslie Headland must be a big fan of it. During May's Jedi test, Sol's tablet shows a couple more familiar images for her to see telepathically: a Wampa, a Tuka Cat, and a Gonk droid. The twins' M count is tested through their blood samples. That, of course, means Metachlorian count. The abbreviation was first used in The Mandalorian and again in The Bad Batch. One of the Witches of Bryndock appears to be modeled after some concept art for Kira from Solo: A Star Wars Story, when the character was potentially considered to be an alien. Mother Anastasia turning into black smoke seems to be an imitation of Night Sisters like Mother Talzin or Marin, who could teleport around in a similar way, but their version manifested as green flames rather than black smoke. Kelnaka attacks Torben with his claws while under the witch's spell. That is a major act of dishonor in Wookiee culture. Any Wookiee who used their claws against another living thing was exiled and labeled a Madclaw. While Kelnaka was likely not punished for his actions, seeing as he was possessed, Leslie Headland has said that his guilt at least partially led to his self-imposed exile on Kofar. In the season finale, titled The Acolyte, Osha seemingly gets possessed by the dark side while wearing the Stranger's helmet. Sith helmets have been known to do things like that. The Mask of Exim Panshard was central to the Aftermath books and the novel Shadow of the Sith, which possessed a woman named Kiza for decades. The Mask of Darth Momin contained his spirit, and he was able to control anyone who put it on. When the helmet is removed, Osha's eyes have some red to them, as if she had been fully immersed in the dark side. Yellow and red ringed eyes are a hallmark of dark side users. Many fans call them Sith Eyes, which isn't fully accurate. Any Force user can get the red eyes, it's just about how deeply connected to the dark side they are at the time. Osha misinterpreting her vision of the future as May killing Sol reminded me of how Kylo Ren and Rey both saw the same vision of them fighting side by side, and both misinterpreted what it meant, incorrectly thinking the other would join them. May telling Sol, "See you in hell, Jedi," is reminiscent of Han telling that poor rebel soldier on Hoth that he'd see him in hell. And by the way, yes, there is a version of hell, sometimes called the Void, in some mythologies within the Star Wars universe. There's a spooky man hiding inside the Stranger's Cave, and I don't know who else it could be but Darth Plagueis himself, the master of Darth Sidious. He appears to still be immune like he was in Star Wars Legends, and he is looking perfectly creepy. On Bryndock, Sol tells May that she and Osha were created by Mother Anastasia through the Force. The Stranger perks up, probably because he knows Darth Plagueis would be interested in hearing about that. In Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine tells Anakin his master was so powerful he could influence the Metachlorians to create life, and he had to have learned that power from somewhere. Sol's death is somewhat reminiscent of Han Solo's, a father figure being killed by their dark side-using child, but both of them still show understanding and even compassion in their final moments of life. In her rage when she kills Sol, Osha turns her former master's Kyber crystal from blue to red. That's a process called bleeding. Red isn't a natural color for Kyber crystals, but if a Force user poured all their pain, anger, rage, and hatred into one, it would become corrupted in the dark side and turn red. Any Force user could do this, but there was a Sith-specific rite of passage that involved bleeding the lightsaber of a Jedi they had personally killed, which is exactly what Osha does. When she ignites the lightsaber, it turns from blue to red. This is something we've never seen before. In the past, the blade was simply red when ignited. Maybe Osha didn't bleed the crystal all the way at first, or maybe it was simply to reinforce to the audience what had happened. Either way, it kinda reminds me of lightsabers changing color in the Star Wars Visions short The Ninth Jedi, and for a time it was thought that was how lightsabers worked, that they would change color depending on who held them. You could see that in some of the classic Marvel Star Wars comics. The Stranger wiping May's mind is similar to the story of Darth Revan in Knights of the Old Republic. After the Sith Lord was captured by the Jedi Order, their mind was wiped, returning them to a powerful blank slate that could choose to fight for good or evil. Chancellor Drellic is a Tarsant, and now the second Tarsant Supreme Chancellor we've seen in Star Wars. Chancellor Vilim was briefly seen during the destruction of Hosnian Prime in The Force Awakens. Vernestra tells May that the Stranger was a pupil of hers before he turned to evil, directly echoing Obi-Wan Kenobi's lines to Luke about Darth Vader. And those are all the major Easter eggs and references I noticed while watching The Acolyte. There are definitely more smaller details to pick out, so let me know what you caught in the comments. If you're still wanting more Acolyte coverage, I've got a full review of the season coming out tomorrow, and a frequently asked questions video on the way for Monday, so keep an eye out for both of those. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.